Guys, it's finally happened. There is finally a point where I agree wholeheartedly with NewJeans. Hi guys, Han here. If it's not your first time with me, then welcome back. And if it is your first time, hi, I'm Han. I'm a K-pop fan of almost 20 years and I've worked here in South Korea in the K-pop industry as a marketing expert. Recently on my channel, we've been covering the ongoing scandal known as ADOR Gate, the ongoing dispute between HYBE, Heejin, NewJeans and ADOR. Today we'll be covering a lot of the latest big updates, including ADOR's Injunction and NewJeans Response, the latest dispatch expose, and Heejin finally breaking a really long silence. There will also be a part 2 to this video because there are a lot of smaller updates that I felt didn't deserve a full video of their own, but there were too many for me to add to this video, otherwise it would just be super long. And this is also a good point for me to say I'm really sorry for having no upload for 2 weeks. Unfortunately, last weekend my cat was not doing well, so I had to do an emergency vet visit, and then I had a migraine over this weekend, but I'm feeling a little bit better now, and so I felt I could sit down and record this, and you're seeing this video. So I apologise for those of you who've been waiting to hear my thoughts on the recent stuff. If you're new to the way we do things on the channel, there are sources linked to everything I'm going to talk about down in the description below. They will typically be in Korean, but you can just use your browser to translate them. And in the interest of giving a fair analysis, I will present my biases. I'm generally quite indifferent to HYBE, ADOR and NewJeans, although I will say these girls are really starting to test my patience. Like, every time they make a public statement, my sympathy for them decreases by a large fraction. But I am 100% anti Heejin and she can kick rocks. So with that in mind, take everything I say with a pinch of salt. I'm a human, I have biases, but on the channel we generally try to make logic-based or evidence-based conclusions and conjectures for what we think are going to happen moving forward. Okay, that's enough talking. Let's get into the first story. So, on January 13th, ADOR announced that they had filed an injunction against NewJeans. And the contents of this injunction was basically to stop them from doing any independent activities, i.e. signing or contracting with brands without those brands first going through ADOR, which from ADOR's perspective would be a violation of their exclusive contract. NewJeans themselves have said that they consider their contract terminated, having been terminated from ADOR's side, not their own side, and as such they would fulfill all the activities they had pre-scheduled between November 28th and January 5th, which obviously has passed now, and then from that point they would go on to do their own individual activities. Actually, they had like 1 or 2 things that ADOR had already scheduled after this that they hadn't fully, I guess, committed to, and ADOR actually ended up cancelling these activities because NewJeans were not cooperating with them. And in my last video we talked about some of the kind of like unclear activities NewJeans had done, i.e. the Vogue photo shoot and the Omega photo shoot, which actually in hindsight we've now discovered are both contracts that did in fact go through ADOR. However, the NewJeans members have refused to use the NewJeans names in the promotion of these activities. So just to clear the air there, they are technically still legal activities. I don't know how the companies themselves got around not using the name NewJeans when they're contracted with ADOR, but for whatever the case, that's how they've decided to do things. But anything they were to do that would be new would be in violation. They've also done a Calvin Klein shoot, which is actually under ADOR as well. Apparently that was a pre-existing thing, and I think one of the members is also like a Dior ambassador, and that's a pre-existing thing, but Dior themselves are asking for their name not to be used, like Dior brand name not to be used too often in a lot of like news coverage and things like that, which is quite interesting because isn't the whole point of an ambassador to have them ambassadorize you? But anyway, that's besides the point. I'm not going to read the entire statement from ADOR because I think it's a bit long and it's just a lot of legal fluff, honestly, but I will link the English translation in the sources below, and I'm going to read some of the highlights from ADOR's statement and then talk about what they're basically saying. Last week, ADOR filed an injunction with the Seoul Central District Court against the members of NewJeans to regress the provision of agency status and prohibition of advertisement contracts. ADOR decided to file this injunction as the NewJeans members, who unilaterally declared the termination of their exclusive contract, continued attempts to independently contract advertisers and enter into contracts. This decision was made to prevent confusion and damage to third parties, including advertisers. So, there's 2 things that we need to be taking from this. Firstly, we already know that basically staff who still work in ADOR or have worked in ADOR were trying to contact brands on behalf of NewJeans to set up contracts without actually involving ADOR in the process, which is quite interesting because I guess they would be using like the fact that they're an ADOR employee to kind of legitimize the proposition that they're sending. But when it came down to the contract writing part, they would be like, oh, this isn't like ADOR letterhead on this contract, or ADOR is not a signing party in this contract. What's that all about? And I think some brands had reached out to ADOR and let them know that, hey, your employees have been contacting us about this, and that had led to ADOR actually catching that employee and doing an investigation, seizing their laptops, although the employee also refused to hand in the laptop a la Heejin style, and deleted all the evidence, like rebooted the whole system of the laptop before handing it in. But that was a prime example of NewJeans are actively already trying to set up new deals, and ADOR are clearly aware of it. So this is basically saying like, we know this is happening. But also I think the last line is quite telling. This decision was made to prevent confusion and damage to third parties, including advertisers. So it's saying, firstly, we're going to sue that employee, but also advertisers, if you work with NewJeans, we are going to sue you too, because we're making this very clear. These girls are still under our company. So if you do something without us, we're coming for you. And I think that's within ADOR's right, like from their perspective, the necessary legal process to prove that NewJeans is no longer their artist has not been carried out. So why would they miss out on a bag? Like, I think it makes more sense to block contracts than to go and sue all these people afterwards, because that's time, effort, money. ADOR has already been cancelling activities that NewJeans was supposed to do, and NewJeans have already said that we're not doing any new activities past January 5th. So I don't know, if ADOR were to make a contact with an advertiser, even without NewJeans' approval, would NewJeans be obligated to do that contract? Because remember, from the legal viewpoint, NewJeans are not employees of ADOR. ADOR is a business. NewJeans are basically like private traders, like they're freelancers, if you will, and they're being contracted to do work for ADOR. But in that process, I guess they have to agree. And if they're saying, well, our contract is already invalid, and ADOR then says, oh, here's some work we prepared for you, I could see how from their perspective it's like, well, we have no obligation to do that, because that wasn't specified in our pre-existing contract. Of course, the contract is going to say like, oh, you're supposed to do activities that we arranged for you, but I don't know, like I feel like it's grey area, especially when the contract itself is currently under dispute. I don't think it's easy for them to enforce new areas of this contract. So I'm not a lawyer. You guys, any of you who work in law, you can give your personal weigh in on that. I can see both sides of it, like how ADOR could argue that, no, this is your obligation, and how NewJeans can say, this is being disputed, so we're not obligated to do anything until this dispute is cleared up. We'll have to wait and see. But I think it makes sense from ADOR's side not to set up new contracts, because ultimately, if they can't guarantee the girls will do the work, it's going to be a burden on their side. Because typically in these contracts, if the artist has some like bad press or causes some trouble, the label, the agency will have to pay the other party for that kind of issue. So I think it's in ADOR's best interest just not to do anything. And honestly, that's in a way a sort of punishment for NewJeans as well, because if they're not working, they're not earning money. ADOR can afford a little break in their finances. They're still going to get the royalties and things from NewJeans' existing existing music and things like that. And obviously we also know that ADOR is now having an audition, which unfortunately we will talk about in the next video. But yeah, anyway, so back to the statement. The claim that the members' unilateral termination of the exclusive contract is unjust will be confirmed through the lawsuit to confirm the validity of the existing contract. This is the lawsuit that we talked about in our previous in a previous video that ADOR has already filed. However, as the filing ruling may take a significant amount of time, this injunction was filed additionally to urgently address the current confusion. They've kind of given an excuse of like why they've gone for advertising specifically. I will actually talk a bit more about advertising and why they've gone for an injunction on that and not like music or something like that, because I can actually give some insight from my own experience working. But I think it's also very underhanded that they mentioned the final ruling may take a significant amount of time in terms of the contract validity lawsuit, because ADOR are basically reminding NewJeans like, we can control this situation for as long as necessary. Obviously, people always bring up the parallel of the JYJ, i.e. XTVXQ members versus SM, and as I told you, that was like a 5-year process, and they never actually reached a legal verdict. They just settled. They made a settlement, like an agreement between both parties, and that's how that situation ended. We've also seen things like 50-50, which have been much faster, but they were much more cut and dry. So the legal experts who've been talking about this in Korea are estimating this could take up to 2 years, which is a long time for a K-pop group not to be active. And I think ADOR is basically saying here, like, we're holding the anchor, essentially. You can either stay on this ship and float with us, or we can drop this anchor into the sea and you can drown. We promise that when we let you go, we will make sure you sink, basically. That's the way I'm seeing it. It's, in a way, it's a threat. In a way, it's a reminder. Whether you think that's within their right to, like, make comments like that, or if you think that's just, like, it's the truth, that's what it is, or if you think it's, like, an underhanded, like, jab at NewJeans. I can honestly see, again, both sides of that. The next part says, the injunction reflects ADOR's intention to continue its partnership with the members of NewJeans. ADOR also considered the possibility that even if a final ruling confirming the validity of the exclusive contract is issued years later, it may already be impossible to restore the situation to its original state. Okay, now, I think out of everything ADOR has done, it would, if I was NewJeans, this would be what concerned me the most. Because until now, ADOR has been quite docile. They've been on the defense instead of the offense. We've talked a lot about why they might want to maintain relationships with NewJeans, what the benefits to ADOR or Hive as a company might be to keep NewJeans, and why they're going down this route of proving the validity of the contract instead of just suing the girls for termination. Because ultimately, if they lose this like validity lawsuit, the girls get to leave scot-free. Whereas if they were to sue them and win, they would be able to collect the termination payment from them. So why have they gone down this route instead? We talked about, like, okay, there's reasons they would want to keep them, but I think this line about it may be impossible to restore the situation is basically ADOR saying that we realize that even if we win this lawsuit, there may be a chance that NewJeans just can't work after that point. Like, we can't continue because the girls will either be disruptive, or they'll continue to do misconduct, or they'll just not cooperate with us, or whatever it might be. But the fact that they're still going through this process, despite knowing what I think we all know is the true outcome, is that NewJeans will not continue to work with them even if they lose this lawsuit. It's basically ADOR saying, we can keep a hold on you, and once you've, like, waited 2 years, your career's gone through the ground, like down the toilet, you're irrelevant, the industry has moved on, at that point, we're ready to let you go. Which kind of makes it feel like, okay, then why go through this whole process? But it's to set a precedent. It's a reminder to the industry that you can't do what NewJeans is doing and expect to get off scot-free. Also, if they were to win this lawsuit for the validity of the contract later down the line, they could also then still sue NewJeans for all the damages, the lost profits over that 2-year period that it's taken for this verdict to come out. Because as we know, as we've discussed, ADOR can't really sign them up to do anything else if they can't guarantee the girls will cooperate. If I was NewJeans, as much as I want to be free of ADOR, I would continue to do my schedules, because the worst case scenario is that we lose the lawsuit, and then that's money that I've earned and that's work that I've done, and it's still going to be beneficial to them to grow their name and things like that. Whereas if they don't do any work and then they lose on top of that, they've lost out on profits, they've lost value over the time, and then ADOR could still come for them, like suing for misconduct or breach of contract and things like that, and then I now have to pay extra penalties on top of the lawsuit that I've already lost and paid for as well, because they're still going to be paying legal fees, right? The other thing as well is that if ADOR did decide to let them go after winning this, it would be a much easier process, it would be much faster, and the girls would ultimately still have to pay the termination fee, as well as a portion of ADOR's legal bills, basically. That's how it works in Korea anyway. Anyway, to finish off, the last part I'm going to read is, through the injunction application, ADOR appealed to the court stating, for the sake of NewJeans, a system must be established to correct any wrongful decisions or actions before the scope of the legal liability spirals out of control. Oh my. Okay, ADOR has also shared concerns on behalf of the entertainment industry, stating if unilateral termination of exclusive contracts and independent entertainment activities without legal procedures are allowed to set a precedent, it will deter investment in the entertainment industry, destabilizing and significantly shrinking the foundation of the K-pop industry. As I've already said, like, I just need a quiet week in this story to sit down and talk to you guys about the implications of this, because this story is so much bigger than just NewJeans. The reason this story is interesting is because it is unprecedented. There are so many things that just shouldn't be allowed to happen taking place, and if NewJeans come out on top of the situation, if they get what they want, if NewJeans are allowed to get what they want, this is going to have much bigger implications on the whole industry. It's going to devalue the K-pop industry. It's going to devalue contracts. It's going to kill investor confidence. And it's going to cause a lot of problems, basically. It's also going to have negative effects on other artists who are actually going through the things that NewJeans claim they are going through, like KG from Vicha and other stories that have been coming out recently in the K-pop industry. And by the way, if you want me to talk about those, please let me know down in the comment. I will do some research and we can fit them in sometime. But anyway, I did also want to point out the use of the phrase "for the sake of NewJeans." I feel personally that this is like a backhanded comment. Like, I think this is straight up just an insult. Obviously we know NewJeans want to leave ADOR, whether for valid reasons or not. That can be their desire. Like, we don't have to justify what they want per se to acknowledge that's what they want, right? I do think it sucks for them that they feel so uncomfortable in ADOR and that they can't be comfortable in ADOR. I do think it sucks that Heejin has been able to, like, Stockholm syndrome them into hating where they are and feeling unsafe there, but they have a legal obligation, and as ADOR mentions in the statement, before the actions and decisions go beyond the scope of legal liability, i.e. before you guys rack up more debt than you can physically pay, more penalties than you can actually handle. I don't know actually in Korea what the punishment is if you cannot pay, like, fines. Like, I don't know if that gets converted to jail time. I don't know if you have to file for bankruptcy. I don't know. But whatever it is, it could be, like, future ruining, and I don't want that for NewJeans. Like, as much as I said, like, my patience is wearing thin with these girls, what I'm hoping for them is for them to wake the hell up and just to realize that, okay, the situation sucks. How can we make the best of a bad thing? I've said this in previous videos and I'll say it again. If I was in NewJeans, even if I truly, really hated ADOR, I would tough it out for what is now 4 years left on their contract, earn my keep, make a name for myself, and then move on to my own thing. Like, they don't have to stay once they finish their contracts. It's just a matter of how are they going to wrap things up. They can't afford to leave now. Even if they worked for just like 1 or 2 more years, if they really put their asses into it, they could probably afford to pay the way of that contract in a couple years' time, and they could still leave early and go and do whatever the hell they want, right? I think they really have to wake up from this delusion they're in that they can just go about things the way that they want, ignore pre-existing procedures, ignore legal, like, obligations, ignore, like, the piece of paper, like, the physical contracts they've signed, and just of course NewJeans have released their own long response on their social media, on their Instagram story actually. Again, where are the lawyers? And they are once again playing the victim of Hybe and ADOR's, like, harsh attacks. And we're going to actually go through the statement line by line because firstly, there's a lot that we need to go into, and there's a lot of questionable statements that we need to point out, as God intended. So, hello. This is Minji, Hani, Danielle, Herin, and Heejin. We have learned through the media that ADOR has filed both a confirmation of validity of exclusive contract lawsuit and an application for an injunction to preserve agency status and prohibit advertising contract execution. We recently received the complaint and application documents, and we have appointed law firm Sejong LLC as our legal representative. Okay, first thing first, Sejong, aka Shin and Kim, is the same law firm as Heejin. They are the #2 law firm in South Korea, and this actually should not surprise anybody because I've been saying this, like, oh my god. Honestly, when I read this, it actually really, like, pissed me off because guys, I'm genuinely starting to get a little bit tired of the story because I feel like we're just repeating the same things at this point. Bearing in mind, this is the first time that NewJeans themselves have actually named their law firm. We saw, I want to say back in like September, around that time, the parents of NewJeans came out and said, we have hired lawyers for our daughter. That was the extent of their statement. They didn't mention what the law firm was. They didn't mention how they had decided on this law firm, how they were paying for these lawyers, who, like, no information, just a vague statement. We've hired legal representation. During NewJeans' November 28th press conference, they said we can't talk about anything related to the contract, anything related to legal termination, because that needs to go through our lawyers. Again, who are these lawyers? It is only now that they've actually basically been forced to go to court. Again, the initial injunction for the validity of exclusive contract was not, not injunction, the initial lawsuit was not filed against NewJeans. It's filed independently by ADOR. It's simply, we need you to review this contract. But if NewJeans want to have an influence on that outcome, they need to come and present some evidence, or the lawyers need to come and present some evidence, right? Whereas this injunction is directly targeted at NewJeans, which is the first action we've seen ADOR take against them. So in a way, this is the first time NewJeans have actually themselves also been physically required to be present and to present legal argument, if, like, whether they want to or not, right? So it does make sense for them to announce their lawyers now, but the question is, who were their lawyers before this? Who were the lawyers that their parents got? Who were the lawyers that they were alluding to during the press conference? Why have they never mentioned these lawyers before? If I could make an educated guess, if you will, if I could take a shot in the dark, a shot in the light even, we can see the target, I would say they're Heejin's lawyers. We've already seen cases of Hani, for example, meeting Heejin and Heejin's lawyer, and we will talk in due time about the girls meeting Heejin's lawyers in other occasions prior to this event. And the question that then follows that is, if they've been using lawyers that are representing Heejin, that are hired by Heejin, who have Heejin's best interest in mind, have those lawyers actually been giving them sound legal advice that is beneficial to NewJeans? Because a lot of like YouTube lawyers and industry experts who've commented on this have made it a point constantly that NewJeans' best interests and Heejin's best interests in the situation are not aligned. They do not support one another. We haven't got to this point yet, but you'll see that NewJeans, for example, constantly refer to ADOR and Hybe as a single entity. They always mention their names together. And it's because for them, if Hybe and ADOR are a single entity, then Belif and ADOR are a single entity. Source Music and Hybe, Belif and Hybe are single entities. And therefore, Hybe, ADOR, all of them become liable for each other's actions and situations and problems, right? And we've already discussed that from NewJeans' perspective, their workplace bullying is actually a problem from Belif, which is Islet's label, right? It's the manager of Islet who said ignore them. It's the Hybe internal document that said, oh, we're gonna let NewJeans die out, or whatever it is. So they need all these entities to be the same, because then they can say that we want to leave ADOR because ADOR is liable for the actions or words of Hybe and Belif, right? So they need them all to be the same company. Whereas in Heejin's first injunction, the reason she won that injunction is because the court ruled that Hybe and ADOR are separate entities. So already the basis of their arguments do not match. We've also got the ongoing lawsuits against Heejin. We've got the tampering allegations, which haven't gone anywhere legally yet, but are really ramping up, and apparently there's more to come, because when isn't there, right? So these two groups, Heejin and NewJeans, or NewJeans and Heejin, whichever side, what they need from these lawyers is not the same. They will also talk about why they selected these lawyers in a bit, and I will actually have to disagree with that reasoning also. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. But I also just want to point out that, again, they've mentioned that they've had legal representation throughout this whole process. Even until this statement, we have not actually heard from these lawyers directly. These lawyers have not released a statement on behalf of NewJeans the way they have done for Heejin. And this statement, again, is coming from NewJeans themselves. Now, you could say this is a PR decision, that they want to sound like they are making their own decisions and they are sharing their own voice, which, again, based on previous leaks, we kind of know that isn't the case anyway. Or you could say it's, well, maybe these lawyers aren't speaking on behalf of the members because they don't technically represent the members. They're technically Min Heejin's lawyers. Therefore, there's no obligation, and they could easily spin it to the PR angle to be like, oh no, you guys should make your statement. Like, don't include us. Like, you guys do it. We'll check it for you, you know, like, we'll double check your homework before you submit it, but like, don't put our name on the team project, you know? Like, anyway. I also think it's funny that they mentioned that, oh, we heard this through the media, because firstly, we already know they're refusing to meet ADOR. ADOR said that many times, and they will even say it again in their own statement. So how else were you planning to hear it? There was also news coverage that said that they had actually been dodging receiving the actual mail, because bearing in mind, we now have evidence that they are not living in the dorm. So how is ADOR supposed to even like mail this to you or send this to you? You're not meeting the staff, you're barely coming to the company, although they are coming to the company occasionally, but then if they ambush them at the company, they're gonna say like, oh, they ambushed us with legal documents. Like, how else are you expecting ADOR to reach out to you? In the case of the actual like validity of the exclusive contract lawsuit, they're not obliged to tell you anything because they're not suing you, so they don't have to let you know. And in the case of the injunction, well, you're gonna get summons anyway, so actually it's the court's job to let you know. So in all of this, all I'm trying to say is that oh, we found out through the media is such a like manipulative statement, because they basically made it so that's the only way they could find out. Anyway, I digress. Moving on. Given that ADOR and Hybe have appointed Kim and Chang law firm, the #1 law firm in Korea, as their representative, we felt we needed a law firm capable of responding to this. That's not the reason that they hired Sejong. We believe Sejong is the most suitable law firm to respond to this rapidly progressing injunction, as they already understand Hybe and ADOR's wrongdoings and issues. Okay, firstly, we already talked about that Hybe and ADOR are not the same thing, but I also want to talk about their justification for why they've hired Sejong. And they said it's because they already understand Hybe and ADOR's issues and wrongdoings. We're gonna assume they mean like through the fact that they've worked with Min Heejin, although they haven't come and said that. If they're making it sound like, okay, this is our first contact with Sejong, which we know is not true, but if that's what they're saying, right, then the only way Sejong could be familiar is through Min Heejin's case, because we already know they're working on that case, right? But here's the thing where I was saying about like their two issues don't align, because Min Heejin's case is her being investigated for the hostile management takeover, meeting investors illegally, breaking her shareholder agreement, possible tampering allegations, and her trying to get her stock options, right? These are the reasons that Min Heejin is fighting with Hybe, and now she's also being sued for defamation, obstruction of business, and insult, right? This is what Min Heejin's fighting about. This is what her lawyers should know about. So all of that stuff is about Min Heejin versus Hybe, Min Heejin versus B-Lift, and Min Heejin versus Source Music. Oh, and also Employee B, so Min Heejin versus one of the ex-ADOR employees, but that's like a more private thing, right? On NewJeans' side, their whole case is about workplace bullying. Where is the overlap? How is any of this evidence, any of this information at all relevant to NewJeans' situation? Even if you want to say that, okay, let's say, we're playing with very strong hypotheticals here, guys. I need to use your imagination. We all have an inner child. Let's say Min Heejin wins everything. She didn't defame Islet, and they are actually a copy of NewJeans. She didn't like defame Seraphim and Source Music. NewJeans was supposed to debut first, and it was Hybe's fault and Source Music's fault that they didn't. And she's supposed to get her stock options, all this kind of stuff. That still doesn't mean that NewJeans were actively mistreated by ADOR. Because remember, ADOR and Hybe are separate entities. And also bear in mind, ADOR with NewJeans, at this point it's been like 6 months now, where Min Heejin has not been the head of ADOR, right? But NewJeans were already expressing their desires to leave just 1 or 2 months after she was removed from the CEO position. So they're basically saying all the bullying and mistreatment they got happened in that 1 or 2 month time period. So all the stuff before that, like the delayed debut, all this other stuff, is irrelevant. Because at that time, Min Heejin was ADOR from their viewpoint, right? So all of that stuff is not important. It's everything that happened after she wasn't the CEO. Where is the evidence? None of this stuff is relevant to this case. Are we following? Are we following? Eyes on me. We're all here, right? We understand how this doesn't make sense. Anyway, let's continue. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm getting so worked up, but it's just dry. In a piece. Let's continue. Hybe and ADOR fail to fulfill their duties as an agency to protect and nurture their artists. Throughout our activities, there were various forms of interference, both big and small, and they essentially abandoned us and tried to replace us, disguising the statement, "We will terminate your entertainment career," as extended vacation. Okay, actually I didn't realize this when I first wrote the script, but I have to talk about a few things in the statement. Firstly, there were various forms of interference. What interference happened from ADOR's side? The only thing I could think they could possibly be talking about is the seizing, like the investigation basically of that employee that we mentioned earlier, seizing of the laptops and things like that, which is a minor inconvenience to NewJeans, maybe a major inconvenience to the staff themselves, but is essentially a 1 or possibly 2 time occurrence compared to the number of activities they constantly have. And also, is it ADOR's fault that they have an ongoing internal investigation because of Heejin? Okay. And also, what about the interferences that you guys yourself have been making? Because we know NewJeans are not living at their dorm. We know that they've been actually attending their schedules like with their own individual cars and individual drivers. They're not using the company provided vehicles or managers at this point, although they are still coming to the company to get their hair and makeup done, which is hilarious to me. They're the ones who are making it difficult for ADOR to sign future contracts or line up more work for them. So this is very like, okay, show us the receipts, because you're saying that ADOR are the one interfering with your schedules, but show us the interference. If anything, ADOR have only continued to carry out your schedules, and saying that they essentially abandon us. What? And tried to replace us? This is obviously talking about Eyelet, but you can't say ADOR tried to replace you in, again, this 2-month period of Heejin not being the CEO. When did ADOR try to abandon you? Also, "We will terminate your entertainment career." Where's the evidence for the statement? Extended vacation. Guess what? You're having an extended vacation now because you're going to court. Like, I'm sorry. Inflammatory statements with 0 evidence. Like, I feel like we're beating the same dead horses and it's just getting old, it's getting tired, it's getting boring. And I feel like this is how a lot of the general public feel reading this statement. For me personally, it's just very irritating. I don't like having my time wasted. That's why I'm getting annoyed. Because there's better things I could be doing right now. But although I love making videos for you guys, that's what I'm saying. But I'm like, I could be reading stories that actually matter about things that are actually important. But we're here to talk about NewJeans. Anyway, yeah, I'm tired of their like constant playing the victim, basically. Moving on. Even after the legitimate termination of our exclusive contract, groundless criticism poured in through the press and YouTube reaction channels. Most of which contained information that could only be provided by ADOR and Hybe. We cannot help but think that ADOR and Hybe are at the centre of all these situations. While ADOR and Hybe publicly asked us to return, behind the scenes, where the public cannot see, they have continued to harass and attack us as before. Recently, they secretly met with some of our parents in attempts to persuade and divide us. Phew, okay. Firstly, Hybe, if you would like to put me on your payroll, if you want an exclusive release in English, like, my email is in the description. But anyway, like, to say that everybody criticizing them in the press and YouTube have to be paid by Hybe, this is very Heejin-esque. Actually, we're going to talk about her saying something to the same effect very soon, which irony that they're basically saying the same things. Yes, they obviously collude with each other. Yes, they're already on the same side, but they're trying to present it as these are, like, every time NewJeans come out and do anything, they're like, these are our independent thoughts and decisions, right? But a lot of their verbiage, a lot of their statements, a lot of their arguments are echoing things that Heejin has said, which you can only give so much benefit of the doubt. Like, we've run out of benefits to give. I'm sorry. The taxes have dried up. It's time for you to start paying your dues. Like, we're not stupid. I feel like if you've come this far into this situation, if you've been following the evidence, even if you just look at what's been said on the surface, if you look at the images we've seen, if you look at the actions we've seen, like, once is a coincidence. Twice is like a miracle. But like, we're like 15 times in that the same things have been happening. The same, like, claims are being made. The same evidence is being used to refute them, or new evidence is being used to refute them. Like, are we still believing these baseless statements this far into it? Like, genuinely, I feel like there's not many people who like actively are pro NewJeans in sense of like they think NewJeans are completely right. I know there are some bunnies who watch this video who recognize that what NewJeans are doing is not good for them, and they're here to, I guess, be informed on the situation. And I appreciate you guys. I think that's how fans should be. This is just a general K-pop thing, but I think fans do not have to be subservient to their idols. Like, we don't have to agree with we are our own people. We have our own moral compasses. We have our own thoughts, opinions, and values. We can see an idol do something and be like, oh, I like that, I support that. And we can see an idol do something and be like, I like you, but I don't think what you're doing is the right thing. And that is a very hard mindset to find amongst a lot of K-pop fans, old or young. I've definitely in my past been that person of like, no, my oppa said this, my oni said that, and like I'm fully 100% for the artist at all times. But as I've grown, as I've matured, I've learned to say like, okay, I don't fuck with that, but that's your choice as a human being. For example, I don't like smoking. I don't think the Heejin music video is sexy. I even uploaded a reaction to it. I thought the video itself is sexy, but I don't think the smoking scenes are sexy. And I didn't comment about the smoking because I knew that's not my place. If he wants to smoke, that's his thing, that's his choice. But I don't have to like it. I don't have to pretend that I like it. And I don't also have to criticize him for it. You know what I mean? So that's just an example. And I feel like with NewJeans, they really, 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 really need fans to tell them like, girls, we love you, we support you, want what's best for you, but this is not it. Anyway, the other thing they mentioned in this section is how ADOR has been reaching out to their families, and they've been using the words like secretly and divide us, again very manipulative, like trying to invoke certain emotions out of whoever's reading this, right? And I'm like, again, we already know you are not going to the company, or you're not speaking with the company, sorry. You're not living at the dorm. There's not really many opportunities for them to reach out to you. Who else are they supposed to go to? Like, of course they're gonna go to your parents, especially when I think one of the members, the youngest member, is still a minor. To some extent, they actually have to include the parents in the legal process. This is also not the first time that we know ADOR has spoken with the parents. When this all started, ADOR was very open with the fact that, oh, we're reaching out with NewJeans' parents. Some of the parents are refusing to talk to us, some of the parents are meeting with us, we're trying to make them understand. When they talked about getting like the Grammy level producer or whatever, they were like, oh yeah, we've spoken with the parents, we've talked about what our plans for NewJeans' future are. So it's not a secret that they're meeting your parents. It's a well-known fact, actually. On top of that, it's interesting you have a problem when ADOR meets your parents, or Hybe, as you call them, meet your parents. But Heejin has been meeting your parents, like, since before you debuted, since before all of this happened. Heejin has herself said that, oh, I've met the NewJeans parents many times. I don't remember where it came out, but I feel like I remember someone saying like, oh, she's even spent like Seollal and Chuseok, which are like huge family only vacations with these girls. Bearing in mind, she doesn't have a family of her own. She's not married, she doesn't have kids, right? So she's been very involved in like the private lives of these girls and meeting their parents. We also know from this batch thing that her lawyers have been meeting the parents, and she's also met the parents. So it's interesting that you have a problem when it's ADOR, but it's completely fine for Heejin to do the exact same thing, right? This statement is actually ultimately just giving more ammunition for ADOR to show in court that these girls are unwilling to cooperate. They don't want to come to negotiations. They don't want to talk. They just want it their way or the highway, and that's not how business works. I also do think that this kind of adds a little bit, just a little bit, of validity to the possibility that it was actually one of the fathers of NewJeans who leaked the Telegram messages in the previous dispatch expose that we talked about like a couple of videos back. If the parents are actively like mentioning, are actually meeting ADOR, and we talked about this in their press conference as well, how they've talked about like, we are united, we cannot be divided. It's almost like, why do you need to point that out? Like, you actually emphasizing that is making it less believable, because it's like you're saying it because you have to, as opposed to it just being like a natural thing to put in here. And it sounds like maybe some of the parents are starting to be persuaded by ADOR, or they're starting to realize the gravity of the situation, and they're trying to convince the girls to go back to ADOR, but the girls themselves are like, no, we're team Heejin, we're not continuing, blah 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 blah. So anyway, the other thing as well is, if the parents are meeting with ADOR, that means the parents themselves have agreed to meet with ADOR. So why is there a problem? Your parents are their own people, they have their own volition. Moving forward, instead of disparaging, attempting to divide, and engaging in media play with false information through cowardly methods behind the scenes, we prefer to determine right from wrong, honestly and fairly. Guys, it's finally happened. there is finally a point where I agree wholeheartedly with NewJeans. I too think we should determine wrong from right fairly and honestly in the court of law. This is what everybody has been asking for from the beginning. The fair and honest way to make decisions when two parties cannot agree is to have an objective third party come in and check the rules. And in this case, the only way to do that is to go to court, which guess what? The people taking you to court is ADOR. You guys did not do anything on your end. You did not instigate anything to make this happen. So you can't then come back and be like, let's do this the honest and fair way, when you were the reason that didn't happen in the first place. Oh my goodness. We state this verbally. The five of us have absolutely no intention of returning to Hybe and ADOR, from whom we cannot even expect the minimal good faith. They pay the exit fee. No one's stopping you. Like, this is the thing. Nobody is saying you have to go back to ADOR if you don't want to. We're simply saying if you want to leave, leave through the proper process. Go to court, pay the exit fee, and go about your merry way. And nobody will have any problems. Some people are gonna be very happy that you paid a very large exit fee. Personally, I don't feel either which way. I feel like it's a shame, but it is what it is. That's the process. A lot of people will actually be very happy that you've left the door because that's what you wanted, and they support you and they want to support the decisions that you make. But you have to go through the correct process. If we go based on the evidence we have seen, there has not been any aggression on ADOR's side towards NewJeans until this most recent injunction. And even that injunction is well within ADOR's right from their perspective, from the base of their argument, which is you still have an exclusive contract with us. Therefore, any work you do has to go through us. That is a very reasonable position for ADOR to hold. It is getting progressively harder to give NewJeans sympathy because they have continued to not show anything. And I understand some fans are like, oh, well, they can't show everything publicly because it gives ADOR a chance to retaliate or whatever. But the reality is, for example, if somebody slaps me, this is going to be a wild hypothetical, but run with me here, right? If somebody slaps me, I've got a bruise on my face, I've got medical records, I've got CCTV images of them making contact with my face, and I release that publicly before I take them to court. Realistically, what kind of argument can they come up with to justify in court how that is not assault? Okay, maybe I verbally assaulted them before they slapped me, but they still were the first ones to slap me. They put their hands on me. That's still shown. I was injured. That's still shown. Then you can say, oh, well, I didn't slap that hard. Well, I've got the bruise to prove it. I've got the medical report to prove it. Like, even if they know the evidence that I'm bringing to the table, if that evidence is hard, irrefutable evidence, it doesn't matter if I share it publicly. And also, if I have the evidence, why am I waiting for them to take me to court? Why would I not just go straight to the court and be like, this person assaulted me, I want my paycheck, and I want them locked up? Like, why are NewJeans waiting? Why is there so much inaction? Why is there no evidence? And it's simply because they don't have any. As I said, the benefit of the doubt well is out of business. The bank has closed down. There are no more benefits to give at this point. We have to be realistic. It's gotten to the point where we have employees going to their dorms wearing body cams. We'll talk about the body cam footage in my next video because there's a lot there. There's a lot of also misinformation about that. But this is just, it's just too much. It's just, at this point, it's been so long. It's been almost a year now that this story's been ongoing. And we are 8-9 months deep, and NewJeans have presented nothing. Nothing. I completely understand believe the victim mindset. I completely understand, again, wanting to support your idols, wanting to support their choices, but we have to look objectively at the fact that ADOR and Hybe's side have brought a lot of evidence. Independent parties, which whether you think they're on their payroll or not is irrelevant because Dispatch are not photoshopping pictures. Even if the reality is Dispatch might be the most disgusting tabloid in South Korea, but they've always been accurate. They've never been wrong. So I think that there's a level of validity to anything they claim because they've proven themselves time and time again that, yeah, they might not go through things in the most ethical way and they might report things that we personally feel like we don't need to know, but the reality is they're genuinely accurate. So when this side has so much evidence that we can easily put together, we can follow the series of events, we can understand the bigger picture, and this side is like an abstract painting of like pretty colours, you might like this artwork more. But we have to admit this has got a bit more skill in it, okay? Last part of the statement, because I know I've talked a lot. Even after the termination of our exclusive contract, we wanted to complete our remaining schedules and contracts amicably without conflict, and we hope to avoid causing harm to the involved parties. Seeing ADOR and Hive refuse to cooperate with these intentions and efforts, and causing harm to us and many others through improper methods, we decided to no longer remain silent. Again, provide evidence. What did they do? Specifics. We will fight proudly in court through legal proceedings to clearly reveal the wrongdoings of ADOR and Hive and to make the truth known. Again, fully agree with you. I would love to hear this. We are sorry to worry our fans who cherish and love us. However, we will stand firm until the end through legitimate means so that we can freely share our music with you again soon. Please continue to support us. Thank you. We got there. Okay. Following this IG story, they also uploaded a feed image asking their fans in the caption to help them come up with a new name for them to use during their upcoming activities, whatever those might be. They're very legal activities. Using a new name would be actively going against their exclusive contract with ADOR, which from their point of view doesn't exist, so okay, that's fine, but from ADOR point of view that's definitely a point of contention, and ADOR have mentioned that. It would actually be considered a serious breach of contract. That statement comes from ADOR themselves. I don't know if that's a legally like valid statement, but if it is a legally valid statement, that is giving ADOR a lot of ammunition to sue them either now or at the end of this whole like lawsuit process, right? Again, if they have lawyers now, I wonder why their lawyers are allowing them to carry out what we know to be basically an illegal move by asking to get a new name and working with that new name. I also do think it's interesting that they've decided to go to the fans for a name. I want to give them the little benefit of the doubt, the little drops that are left. You could say this is a really good PR stunt. A lot of K-pop fans love being able to contribute to like the branding and the ideas of the idols. I know 80s was a group that used to release like 2 music videos or 2 songs before an album, and then the fans could pick the title track. I think like community activities like that are a great way to market, and I can see Heejin being like, oh, this is a great way to like solidify your bond with your fans. If they pick your new name, they're gonna want to stand by the name that they picked, the group that they named, you know, like they feel like they're part of your like rebirth process. So on a PR side, I could actually being like a really good idea. But on the flip side, if Heejin, I feel like Heejin as a narcissist would not want a fan creative name. She would be like, I birthed you, I named you, I want to give you your new name for the new chapter. Or better yet, or not better yet from her perspective, but better yet for NewJeans themselves, if they're saying like, we want to be free, we want to take charge of our own creative process, why not they come up with their own names or hire a branding company to come up with a name for them? Like, I feel like the way they're going about it kind of shows that they don't really have any like external support. They don't have a marketing agency or a branding agency or someone working with them or for them, even Heejin, that they're going to the fans. And I also wondered like, what happened to your big statement on November 28th when you were like, we will fight for the name NewJeans, we want to keep our name? Like, that was a very quick turnaround. It hasn't even been 2 whole months. Like, this is already you guys going back on your own word in such a short period of time. And yes, obviously we know there's legal reasons why they can't use the name NewJeans, but there's also real legal reasons why they can't use a new name as well. So personally, I don't really buy into the whole like this is a great PR stunt thing, as much as I do think it's a good idea. But since they're asking for you guys watching, what new name do you think NewJeans should have? In fact, we can't even keep calling them NewJeans in these videos. So if you guys suggest some cool names, I'll actually start to use that name to refer to the girls moving forward, because I think that would be a little bit fun, a little bit cheeky. Personally, I've seen a lot of people refer to them as Heejin, which I think is hilarious. So maybe that will be one of the options. If you like that, let me know. But if you guys have any ideas, I'm curious to hear. Anyway, we're about to wrap up this first story. I know this up until now is still just the first story, but unfortunately the other 2 will be a lot shorter. So ADOR did of course respond to NewJeans Response. As you can expect, that was short and sweet, but quite logically sound. They said, ADOR maintains that the exclusive contract remains valid and we are sincerely complying with the court procedures. We regret that the members' attempt to pursue independent entertainment activities, such as holding a contest for a new group name before receiving a legal judgment, could constitute a serious breach of contract. So as I said, again, this serious breach of contract term is coming from ADOR. I don't know if it's legally binding, but if it is, that's definitely grounds for them to be sued, especially if, as we're expecting, the court stands firm with that the contract is valid. And I don't think anything that ADOR said is particularly controversial. It's very logical from their side. The last thing to talk about in terms of the injunction is obviously the implications, my favorite word, the implications of if ADOR wins and NewJeans loses, or if ADOR loses and NewJeans wins, right? So if ADOR wins the injunction to stop NewJeans working with new advertisers, working with new brands, NewJeans will obviously not be able to work with advertisers moving forward, regardless of if they use their real name or the new name that they come up with without first going through ADOR. If they do, they will absolutely be sued. They can actually be sued currently. We don't have to wait till the end of the lawsuit. They can be sued currently for going against the injunction itself. I don't know how much that fine would be. It would probably be a fine. It's not going to be jail time. Like, most of this stuff is very, like, corporate law, civil law. There's not going to be jail time for most of the things that are happening here. But I don't think it's going to be worth it for either NewJeans or the company they're working with. NewJeans are probably not going to earn enough to cover the fees of breaking the injunction, or all the money they earn is going to have to then be shared with ADOR. And for the company, burning the bridge with ADOR is just not smart, because ADOR obviously is an extension of Hybe, which means you're burning that bridge with Hybe, which just has, like, the collective value of all the other Hybe artists is always going to outweigh the value of NewJeans. Like, let's just be real. And finally, if this injunction passes for advertisers, future injunctions for music or concerts or fan activities and things like that, like fan signs and things like that, could easily also follow suit, because it would set a precedent basically that, well, if the injunction has been valid for the reason of the contract is still under dispute, then future injunctions would be valid for the same reason, which would basically blockade all of NewJeans' activities. So that's a very ideal situation for ADOR, because ultimately they don't want NewJeans to do anything without going through them, so it doesn't cheapen the brand name, and so that ADOR gets their money. On NewJeans' side, if ADOR loses the injunction and NewJeans wins, this is obviously going to be a huge deal for them. It's going to be basically the first legal decision that legitimizes their standpoint of the contract is not valid. It's going to obviously give them the opportunity to go and do a lot of advertising deals, which we will talk about right after this, like why that's important. And again, the same precedent in terms of like future injunctions, it kind of gives them a green light to, like, you can start using this new name, you can start making music, you can start doing activities that you would do normally under ADOR, because if this injunction failed, it's a high chance that other injunctions would fail. I do still think it would be a bad choice for any brands to work with them, because they would still be getting ultimately in Hybe's bad books, especially because in this case it would actually cheapen the value of the name NewJeans if these girls are allowed to go and do activities under a different name. So that's going to be a serious implication for ADOR, because if they then go down the termination route, that could potentially lower the value that NewJeans have to pay for the perceived, like, part of their termination penalty is the perceived, like, projected earnings or, like, lost value. So if they've cheapened the value of NewJeans, that could potentially lower the value of that penalty as well. Okay, the other thing I just wanted to briefly, I don't know if it's going to be brief because, you know, I can talk, but the last thing I wanted to talk about in terms of the injunction is why they went specifically for advertising. And this is where my own experience comes in. Beyond this already being a point of contention in terms of, like, the Vogue and the Omega and the ADOR and the other, and Calvin Klein and other brand deals they've done, this has obviously been, like, a talked about topic. The reason ADOR has gone for the advertising injunction, in my personal opinion, is because ultimately this is where NewJeans makes money. From their conception until now, one thing you'll notice is that NewJeans has actually not put out a lot of music, and they've focused heavily on doing brand deals, which I think is a similar model to what Blackpink did. Like, Blackpink obviously had a few, like, big releases, like mini albums at the beginning, and they obviously did world tours, which NewJeans have yet to do, but Blackpink very quickly dispersed into, like, influencers within, like, luxury brands and things like that quite early in their career, and that's where they continue to do, and they've kind of prioritized that over their music in their later career now, right? And I think NewJeans have kind of gone down a similar vibe, and it's because honestly idols get paid a lot from these. Heejin also has said like she actually chose to work with big brands. So big brands like Coke, like Nike, like Apple, these guys don't actually pay that much to the idol because they're saying like, well, you're getting exposure through working from us, and we're just simply like interacting with our existing base by like staying relevant, by staying on top of the trends kind of thing. Like, if you think about it, fans of NewJeans probably already buy iPhones, but by Apple working with NewJeans, it's like, look, we're still cool, we're still trendy. It keeps that brand loyalty, whereas NewJeans will probably be getting exposed to a lot of new people who don't know them through working with Apple. So from these big brands' perspective, they're the ones providing the value, therefore they're willing to pay less. Whereas on the flip side, smaller brands will pay more because they want the exposure that the idol will give them, whereas the idol is the one basically like who has the upper hand. And Heejin said that she specifically went for these big brands because it actually increases NewJeans' perceived value. For example, if we look at BTS, like, it's a great parallel. BTS started from Puma, then they worked with Fila when Fila was acquired by a Korean company, and now they're working with like designer brands. So it's like they've had like a gradual rise in their value, I guess, whereas NewJeans have started off at the top, and so all these like lower brands can't now reach out and be like, oh, we want to work with you, because they just don't meet the caliber that NewJeans have shown that they can handle, if that makes sense. So this is a really good way to boost NewJeans' brand image and therefore their brand name value. But even though these big brands don't pay as much as smaller brands do, it's still a lot of money that they're going to be paying. And the reality is, because of how IP works, even though we know these big brands provide name value to NewJeans, they don't actually spend that much money on them, right? So you might still be wondering, like, okay, but is that really worth it? Like, why would they still focus on this if they're not making as much money? Well, I've talked previously on this channel about the difference between being famous, i.e. well-known, and popular, i.e. well-liked. And when I say well-liked, I mean specifically having a fan base that spends money on you. And I think NewJeans is a prime example of a very, very, very famous group, but not actually a very popular group, i.e. not a group that has a lot of people spending money on them. And when we talk about spending money, we're talking about, realistically, K-pop fans buying albums, going to concerts, and streaming music. Streaming, we're going to start from the end. Streaming doesn't make money. Like objectively, you have to be getting billions of streams to really see a return on anything. And even that is going to be significantly lower than your other income sources. Streaming is basically a form of marketing. It's just there to say you've topped some charts or you won some awards and things like that, but it doesn't actually provide real monetary value to the artist. Album sales is a big earner, but in the last few years we have seen a downtrend in album sales in K-pop, which is why I think we're starting to see more and more versions of albums, because ultimately they know that for hardcore collectors, people who collect photo cards specifically, we are willing to buy more albums in order to collect the most coveted photo cards or a complete set of photo cards. Especially if you're someone who's already been collecting, it's very, I can say this from experience, it's very hard to stop in the middle and say I'm not collecting everything anymore. So people are willing to spend more. So instead of trying to sell less to more people, they're trying to sell more to fewer people, which one day I'll make a video about K-pop capitalism, because honestly it drives me crazy. As someone who is not financially well off but does spend a lot on K-pop and sacrifices other things to do that, it is extremely frustrating to watch companies go down this route, because I do believe there are better ways. Anyway, but generally album sales are down, and as we know, NewJeans don't release that much music anyway. Even though NewJeans are incredibly popular with the general public, those people don't spend money on K-pop, but they do spend money on brands. And it's easier to say, I'm gonna buy an iPhone because NewJeans are modeling the iPhone, than to say I'm going to buy this really expensive merchandise because it's got NewJeans' face on it. Because an iPhone in and of itself has its own intrinsic value, and the fact that NewJeans modeled it just adds to that value, if for the general public, right? But when it comes to like albums and things like that, that is money that is being spent directly on the artist, in which you have to have a very deep connection to want to do that. Even for a lot of fans who do like generally stan artists, a lot of people don't buy all the versions of albums. A lot of people don't collect photo cards. A lot of people focus on streaming because they don't want physical albums, and that's completely fine. But the reality is that doesn't really make money for the idol. Now, as you guys know, I've worked in the K-pop industry, and actually my first job was in merchandise marketing. I actually worked on a BTS project. So it was BTS were collabing with a third-party brand, or with a secondary brand, and my third-party company was managing that collaboration. So I got to see firsthand what some of HYBE's IP agreements are like. And now I can't go into too much detail because I don't want to get sued. But what I can say is that HYBE are very, very specific. Our company paid for the BTS insignia. We paid for the BTS logo with the official BTS font, which, mind you can actually just buy the font by itself, but to like put BTS with the specific spacing and all this kind of stuff, like that is copyrighted, trademarked, right? So that you have to pay for. And then we also paid for the members' names. And the reason we only paid for those three things is because that's all we could afford. Like, that's all the company could handle, because each of those has its own intrinsic value. When you see something with the BTS logo on it, that's an association, right? When you see something with the members' names on it, that's an association. So these things in and of themselves have value. Now, the additional things we could have paid for were things like face rights, which is pictures of the members. You could pay for music, so that could be album names, song names, or lyrics, and that's even just like the verbiage, like the words. And then you could pay for the sound on top of that, right? You could pay for the music video images, like things like that. So everything is priced separately, and they are incredibly expensive. This is like 2021, so I don't know how much they cost now. I don't even know how much they costed then, because I wasn't actually part of the contract signing process, but I knew what our IP rights were, because we actually received the full like branding pack for BTS. Because bearing in mind, for that logo, they don't just send you like a PNG file, they actually send you like dimensions and everything that tell you like if you need to recreate this, like if you need to resize it, like things like that. There's very specific ways that you need to do it to like for it to qualify as the official trademark, right? So like all that stuff is very sensitive. And also on top of that, this is not universal, but some brands, like some agencies, they're willing to send independent members, right? And they might be priced differently. In some cases, they might price all the members the same, but you have to buy them as a package. You can't buy them separately. In some cases, they might price the members the same, but you can buy them separately. And this is why you see some cases where one member has a deal and not all the members have a deal together, or only one member is working but all the members get paid, which is like a great example of Chu from Luna. That was one of the reasons that she left the group, right? Because she was doing a lot of extra work. But the way their IP worked is that if you worked with one of them, you had to pay all of them. So even though she was doing a lot of work, all the members got paid, right? So working with these groups is very expensive. Even if the companies aren't paying as much to use the idol, they do still have to pay for the IP. And the more they use, like as we said, it starts from the name on the insignia all the way up to their faces, their images, their music. The more they use, the more they pay. So by working with one or two brands, they set like a base price, and now every other brand has to meet that price. So they can very easily like conject how much they could make from each brand deal based on how big the brand is and how much they've been paid by similar brands, for example, right? So the point is that there is a lot of money to be made from actually doing like external advertisements than actually in-house stuff. I will also say, by the way, if you really want to support an idol and you really want them to get paid, buy merch that has their face on it, because that's what they get paid more for, because there's more rights there. But anyways, honestly, I don't do that just because I like merch that like blends in, but just TMI for you guys. But yeah, so the point that I'm making is that this is a very big income stream for NewJeans. I would probably say it's their main income stream, even in their career thus far, and absolutely moving forward now that they can't do like strictly idol promotions. I could see them going, like I said, down a Blackpink sort of route where they do a lot of influencing stuff, because their image is kind of influencery. Like it's selling that Y2K lifestyle image look, right? And all those things of course can be included in the music, but are not just music. So it makes sense. But yeah, ADOR is essentially hitting them where it's going to hurt the most, because they know this is the most important thing to NewJeans. This is also going to be a great time for me to ask y'all to subscribe if you've been enjoying this video so far, if you found what I've said interesting or insightful. We are fast approaching 5k, and I'm thinking of doing an Ask Me Anything, so if you guys would like that, please let me know, because I think that would be fun. And I know a lot of you will have questions about working in the industry, so yeah, we can do that. Also, be sure to like the video if you've enjoyed it so far, because I would really appreciate that. Anyway, bringing this back to NewJeans, ultimately I think NewJeans have never truly been about the music. Like, of course the music is great, I'm not disputing that, and it's a big part of why they became known, but it's not the only thing. And realistically, the ability to make music or not is not what they're most concerned about. They're concerned about having a paycheck, right? And they usually do that through brand deals. I do think a lot of NewJeans' image is quite literally their image. It's the brands they work with, it's the value they present themselves as having. And as I said, I think they're going down like a Blackpink sort of route, where they want to be kind of like Y2K lifestyle influencers, or like trendsetters or something like that. And ADOR is essentially hitting them where it hurts, i.e. in the wallet. Okay, we're finally done with the injunction. We can move on to the dispatch leak. This is going to be much shorter, but I know this video is getting a bit long. This is why I cut it into 2 parts. But basically the whole thing with dispatch this time around was talking about the ongoing relationship NewJeans has had with Min Heejin's lawyer prior to this statement where they announced that Sejong is their law firm. And we've kind of already touched about this. The first thing is obviously like them saying that they picked the law firm because they believe that the firm is already familiar with Hybe and ADOR's issues. We already talked about how their issues with ADOR and Min Heejin's issues with the Hybe collective are not the same, and how there shouldn't actually really be any overlap with this. And the fact that they can't seem to separate that, in my opinion, the fact that they can't separate that again shows that they don't truly have an understanding of the situation that they're in and what it is that they're fighting for. Dispatch also pointed out that NewJeans have obviously been meeting Min Heejin's lawyers prior to this announcement, and they actually brought up the question that I've been asking, which is, who do these lawyers really represent and who's footing the bill? Because what I'm starting to think is that Min Heejin is inviting NewJeans to the table so that they can cover the costs. Min Heejin has said back in October that she spent 2.3 billion won on legal counsel. That was April. So April, May, June, July, August, September, October, right? 6 months she spent 2.3 mil. It's now been November, December, January. That's 3 more months. So that's at least another 1 mil. And mind you, in that first 6 months, she didn't actually do very many like legal activities. She, of course, had her first injunction, which she won. She had her second injunction, which she lost. And she's threatened to sue a lot of people, but she hasn't done very much as far as I've seen. She's also released a lot of public statements, and she's done her 2 press conferences. 2.3 billion for all of that sounds quite expensive based on comments from lawyers here in Korea. It is known that Sejong have a PR company that they work with, and the PR companies will be the ones who set up like the press conferences or release public statements, which Min Heejin has released a few statements through her PR company, through her lawyers. So maybe there's like a deal there that she's also paying for. But as she's now started her true litigation, in the last video we talked about like the court cases. She had 3 hearings this month, and she's got more coming up. Now that she's actually started like real legal action, those bills are going to soar astronomically if that's what she spent on just like public statements, right? And if NewJeans are now using their connection through her and saying that, oh, we're tying our cases together, which implies they're going to be using the same lawyers to some degree, right? Because technically, if NewJeans hired lawyers from Sejong separately, they couldn't share information because of like confidentiality, right? Maybe they could give permission, but I don't think that's how it works. I'm not sure, but that's just my logical reasoning as far as I know. But whatever the case, I don't think it would make sense for them to just use the same law firm if they can't actually share information, which would make me feel they have to some degree be using the same lawyers. So if Min Heejin's like, oh, come in, join meetings with me and my lawyers, become a client, what if, this is just speculation, but what if She's like, hey, I've already signed with these guys, I'm already paying the bills, you guys just give me money and then I'll pay your share of the legal fees. And she's the one sending these girls or their parents or whoever bills, and she could essentially be having them cover her legal fees as well, because in theory she shouldn't have this money. We talked about how her home was seized because she didn't have 100 million won in cash to pay employee B. So how is she paying for everything else upcoming? Yes, pro bono is a thing, or some lawyers might even just take like I don't know what the word is, but like they might not make you pay until after you've done everything, but just inform you like, hey, this is the bill you've racked up so far. I don't think that would be very sensible, but that could be something they're doing. But it's just questionable. Like, I'm asking the question, Dispatch is asking the question, you should be asking the question, who's footing the bills? In terms of the evidence of NewJeans being involved with Min Heejin's lawyer prior, we've already seen on October 8th, the day before Hani's appearance at the National Assembly to talk about workplace bullying, she met with Min Heejin and one of her lawyers. And I did call out how, for me, it's strange that she didn't go there with at least a translator or like legal representation of her own or one of her parents. The fact that she felt comfortable to go to that sort of meeting to talk about that sort of thing with Min Heejin and her lawyer could suggest that she already knew the lawyer and had a level of trust with them as well, or she already thinks that lawyer is her own legal representation, both of which are problematic in my personal opinion. But with the implications from the Dispatch leak, it's implying that, oh, that is actually quite possible. Like, she already feels like it's safe because I already know this person, basically. And we actually have an image from prior to this, September 24th, which is the day before the deadline of NewJeans' YouTube ultimatum. So you remember they made that like surprise YouTube stream on September 11th, and they gave 2 weeks. That would have expired on the 25th. On the 24th of September, the mothers of NewJeans also met Min Heejin and Min Heejin's lawyers. So again, we're seeing this ongoing relationship. As I already mentioned, we know the parents said that they had gotten NewJeans' legal representation, but we never found out who that legal representation was. So it's very questionable that every time we've seen any sort of like decisive action from NewJeans, not only have they met with Min Heejin, but they've also met with Min Heejin's lawyers as well. So it's very clear that she and her lawyers are very involved in the planning. And again, we have to ask, okay, if these lawyers are involved, who are they working for? Because NewJeans' best interests and Min Heejin's best interests do not align. Another reason I do also think that Min Heejin could be pushing the fees onto NewJeans is because in theory, their legal battles should last much longer. It allows her, by her like orchestrating being the middleman in the relationship, it allows her not only to basically manipulate them into paying her fees, but to kind of push her fees onto NewJeans as well, because her lawsuits realistically should wrap up within this year, whereas NewJeans are obviously in this like contract validity lawsuit situation, which is expected to last years. ADOR have said that, lawyers online have said that. We can assume it's going to be a few years for this lawsuit situation to wrap up. So that means that NewJeans' legal action is going to last much longer than hers. If they're sharing a bill, she could easily push or defer her payments into NewJeans' like ongoing like rolling tab, and that could get lost in the years and months of legal action taking place, right? So again, it's another way for, in my opinion, for Min Heejin to push the legal fees onto NewJeans. This is to some degree just speculation, but I think it's very logical, and it's very in line with the pattern of behavior we've seen from Min Heejin. We've seen she can be very smart, very conniving, very scheming, and again, I personally don't think she has NewJeans' best interest at heart. We've already talked about multiple times that their best interests do not align. This is all somewhat speculative in my opinion, but if you don't believe me, the article has an opinion from a legal expert, and they point out meetings between Min Heejin, NewJeans, the parents and lawyers occurred at major turning points in the situation, and this is why the sequence of events, the live broadcast, the parliamentary audit, the resignation and the contract termination announcement don't appear to be purely coincidental. All these things are interlocked. I also do want to give credit to Soullight TV, because he did a little bit of research about Minhij's lawyers that I do want to share with you guys, because I think there's also something very important here that we need to take into account. So we don't actually know all of Minhij's lawyers, but we do know the 2 lawyers that she worked with from her very first press conference when this whole audit started, and we can assume that she's still working with these lawyers now, right? Because it would make sense to have continuous legal representation through all of the related issues, especially considering her B-Lif and Source Music lawsuits are related to the same thing that she was talking about during that press conference. It was actually related to the press conference, right? So, the first lawyer that we know of is Miss Lee. She is a partner of the Sejong law firm, and she is specialized in hostile M&A, mergers and acquisitions, which is basically what Hybe were accusing Minhijin of doing, trying to take ADOR and NewJeans out of Hybe, right? And she's also a member of the Ethics Investigation Committee of the National Assembly. So the speculation there is that she could have used her connection to have Hani summoned for the audit. A big question that a lot of people asked when Hani went there is, why was she summoned out of all the people all over Korea, even out of all the people who work at big companies, who faced workplace bullying, people like Employee B who've filed reports? Why are none of these people being summoned, and why is Hani being summoned of all people, right? The fact that she started off with a expert in M&A, I think it's relevant. Honestly, at the time, I do think it is relevant. Not really a benefit of the doubt situation, just like logically, she's being accused of a hostile M&A, so having someone who knows that and can prove that this wasn't a hostile M&A makes sense. But at the same time, her getting a lawyer about a hostile M&A kind of makes it look like she was trying to do that and she's now trying to cover up as well. So it could be argued both ways. In my personal opinion, it does make sense for her to use that kind of lawyer at the beginning. Now the situation's a bit different, because although she's being sued for the same press conference, the things she's actually being sued for are defamation, obstruction of business, and insult, which are not related to the hostile M&A. So it would have made sense for her to get additional legal counsel who specialize in this sort of area, or like IP rights, because she's also trying to prove plagiarism, right? Like plagiarism is a big part of her thing, so having someone who specializes in IP or entertainment industry would make more sense. The other lawyer that she had at her first press conference was Mr. Lee. He's also a partner of the Sejong law firm. He specializes in M&A transactions, private equity transactions, and corporate governance. Now this was, in my opinion, this little thing right here is more fishy, because yes, she's being accused of a hostile M&A, so we've made sense of why she would have an expert like try to defend her on that. But this guy's whole thing is very much money, right? Like it's M&A transactions, private equity transactions, corporate governance. And we know, of course, she was being accused of meeting investors, but she's saying she didn't meet investors. So why does she need a lawyer who specializes in investment? That's a very interesting pick when, again, if the argument she made during that press conference is this is all a personal attack because of plagiarism, why would you not have picked an M&A expert and then a entertainment plagiarism, IP rights, copyright expert as your representation? I think this second lawyer, Mr. Lee, is very telling to where her mind was at the start of all of this. And remember, if we go back to Hybe's original argument that her intention was to make a media show and then to get money out of the company and use that money to start her own business, it does then make sense that she would hire a lawyer who's an expert in financial things. And then we take into consideration things like Davolink and the other 2 investors who reached out to Hybe. Her having a relationship with a lawyer specialized in investment and money and all this kind of stuff makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of like a self-report in my personal opinion. It's like she was already preparing for a lawsuit about tampering, about like this kind of stuff, which we know to be her original plan. And it also does, again, beg the question, why didn't she hire anybody related to entertainment law? So the choice of lawyers that Minhijin has is already suspicious, but again, if NewJeans are now using these same lawyers, how do any of their areas of expertise help NewJeans? They simply do not. Okay, we're finally at the last section of this video. I know it's been a long one. Thank you guys for sticking through with me. And this is a word from the Wicked Witch of the West herself. Wicked Witch of the East, because we're in Asia, right? Me and Heejin breaks a long silence. It's been a while since we've had like a 3-hour rant from her. So it's nice to hear her voice. She's still alive, she's still kicking. Nice is an interesting choice of words. But no, Min Heejin did actually decide to come out and talk about something on her Instagram story for the first time in a long time. She seems to like doing things for her Instagram story, and this is also one of the rare times we hear from her herself, because as we said, she's kind of stopped making her own public statements and done a lot of things through PR and her lawyers, but this time she actually shared her own messages. So on January 16th, earlier this month, there was an expose by Chosun Business, a different newspaper company here in Korea, and this featured Telegram messages showing that she spoke with one of the NewJeans uncles prior to Hani's National Assembly appearance. So we already know that she met Hani, but this is now proof of her now colluding with the families as well. She also, within this message, talked about private information about the company, about ADOR and about Hybe, that per her shareholder agreement at the time, she should not have been sharing. So this was back in September, October time, and mind you, at this point she is still working in ADOR. So as an employee of ADOR, she should not be sharing company secrets. She should not be sharing NDAs and things like, or breaking NDAs and things like this, right? And for her to be sharing like information that is a disadvantage to the company, that could be used against the company, not only is it going against her agreement, but it's more evidence to support accusations of artist tampering. Not only that, for her to have mentioned the National Assembly appearance shows once again that she knew that Hani was planning to go to the National Assembly appearance, but did not inform the company, which is also against her responsibility as a worker in ADOR. So there's two layers to this. It's firstly, she's breaking her shareholder agreement for not informing ADOR about the audit appearance, and then there's the side of she's colluding against ADOR, which is artist tampering. Now, of course, Min Heejin denied all of this. She said, I don't know any of these things. I have no connection to any of this government stuff. I had no idea of like all these things that you're saying. And of course she made her usual claims. These messages are being taken out of context. They're being used to paint an incorrect picture. If you know the full story, you'll know this isn't true. Blah, 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 blah. She, same as NewJeans, accused anybody writing articles against her to be on Hybe's payroll and doing media play, which ironically is what we think she's been doing. And she also said that the uncle, and mind you, she's not saying these messages aren't real. This is the constant thing, and I feel like she can't say that because if they go to court, she can't purge herself, right? So, I mean, technically she can lie outside of court, but if she says they're true in court later, it's going to make her previous statements obviously lose validity if we now know they're fake, right? So, or that she lied. So, she said that actually the uncle had reached out to her first, but ultimately she still participated in the conversation. She still knew about the audit. She still failed to inform ADOR. And also, why would the uncle be contacting her about this unless they had a pre-existing relationship where they talked and shared this kind of information, right? So that doesn't really like make her look any more innocent. And of course, we already have evidence of her meeting said uncle. So we actually know this to be Haein's uncle, which, as we mentioned in the previous video, he has a history working in business, and we actually know this to be Haein's uncle because Min Heejin initially uploaded the screenshot without his name censored. Sorry, without Haein's name censored, and then took down the story and uploaded a new story with Haein's name now censored. And I personally, I think this is intentional. I think she did it again to basically divert attention because, again, anything NewJeans do is going to be more interesting to the public because they're the famous people. She's like an industry giant. She's well known for her skill, and yes, there's a level of like, it's like Steve Jobs is Steve Jobs, right? Rest his soul. But like Apple is the brand. Apple is the product. Apple is the thing that people really care about. So in the same way, anything NewJeans do is going to be more significant than her, and I could see her doing this as like a misdirect of like, oh, it's Haein's uncle, and then now everyone's going to go and like deep dive docs Haein's uncle, dig up his history, like try and fit him into this story, which in all fairness is kind of relevant to this situation to a certain degree, because if we now find out that Haein's uncle has specific connections or things like that, that could be more evidence in the story. But the point is that she's so good at manipulating people to focus on things other than her anytime she's getting heat. The other thing that was interesting is like, there's a lot of accusations that have been coming out about Min Heejin recently. There's Davalink, there's the two investors, one being Haeun's uncle, and then the other person that were made like directors of Davalink and then removed after the meeting. There's her ongoing legal cases. There's the ongoing case with VP Lee, which we'll talk about in the second video, and all this kind of stuff. But why did she choose to break her silence on this particular issue and nothing else? And also, why has she not made any public statements showing support for NewJeans? Because remember at the beginning of this, she was like, oh, NewJeans are my children, I'm doing everything for them, like all of this is because of them, it's not about money, I'm just trying to do the best thing for them, I made ADOR for them, I'm fighting for them, I'm fighting plagiarism. Like, okay, well, these girls are getting ripped apart in the media, they're getting legally attacked by ADOR. Why have you said nothing about any of this? But this specific thing, this specific issue is the thing you want to come out and talk about. The reality is she is worried about these tampering allegations because there's so much evidence already, and this could be a very big problem in her, what I believe to be her main goal, which is getting her stock option evaluation, like the 13 times or the 20 times or 30 times, whatever number it is. Like, I think that is her end goal. I've always believed that money was her end goal, and anything that could hurt her case against Hybe for why they should have paid her her full contract amount is the only thing she cares about. It's so interesting that in all of this, in all the time she's been silent, the first time she finally comes out to say something is actually her essentially distancing herself from NewJeans. She's saying this is their independent decision. She's saying I didn't have any involvement in the National Assembly situation. This has got nothing to do with me. Even if that's true, she could, if she really felt like, oh, these are my kids, they're fighting for themselves, they're fighting for me, I'm fighting for them, she could say, well, I don't have any involvement in this, but I'm glad they did it. I support them. I agree with what she said. Like, she hasn't said anything of that sort. And the one time she says something through her own mouth, again, not through a public PR company, not through her lawyers, the one time she says something by herself, it's distancing herself from NewJeans. I think that is very telling. And there was a very interesting article about this exact fact, which refers to her response using a Korean slang term called trigger button. It's what we would basically say is like, oh, that's her trigger, basically. And they describe it as something that when pressed, your survival instincts force you to respond to it like as an instinct, like as a reflex, even if responding into it is not in your best interest. And I'm going to read a little excerpt from this article. After reports about Mr. A and B, Min Heejin's trigger button, which seemed to have been switched to a strategy of silence, reactivated in an unexpected area. The reports about Hani's Labour Ministry complaint. While understandably unpleasant for the involved party, this wasn't as controversial as the existence of Mr. A and B and their potential impact on NewJeans and Min Heejin. What threatens NewJeans now isn't peripheral issues like whether Hani's Labour Ministry report was influenced by others or was her autonomous choice. While it may cause temporary controversy, it's not the core issue of the dispute. Why doesn't Min Heejin's trigger button activate regarding allegations surrounding Mr. A and B? While they could negatively impact NewJeans in the exclusive contract lawsuit with ADOR, Min Heejin makes no defense for the 5 daughters she claims to have birthed with her heart and soul. This contradicts her previous statements that all her fierce responses and battles were for NewJeans. So, the media is also pointing this out. The media are pointing out how, really, Min Heejin only reacts when she herself is in danger. Even though this is a minor thing for NewJeans, it's a huge problem for her. If she is implicated in artist tampering, that is her problem. It has no negative effect on NewJeans. But when there are cases that have negative effects on NewJeans, she remains silent. And this is the same narcissistic behavior we have seen from Min Heejin time and time again. In the recent Davalink chairman interview, the video interview he did after the Dispatch original leak, he's pointed out that out of the 3 hours that he and Min Heejin were talking, she spent 2 whole hours talking about herself. Because ultimately, what does Min Heejin care about? Herself. And remember, she was asking for him to invest in her, not invest in NewJeans, even though NewJeans were a part of the venture that she said she was doing. We've also seen time and time again how she is willing to throw her accomplices under the bus when it is beneficial to her. When the initial injunction happened, she fought for her own place, but she didn't fight for her two VPs, VP Lee, and there was another VP as well. In the situation with Darryl Lake suffered because she said, I have never met this person, I have never seen this man in my life. And in this case now, we're seeing her distance herself from the NewJeans members themselves because it's damaging to her case, it's damaging to her image. We know that Min Heejin is very willing to throw her accomplices under the bus, and now we're also seeing her accomplices possibly being the ones to throw her under the bus. Because remember, every time we get a telegram message that is between two people, it means one of those people shared those screenshots. And if it's not Min Heejin herself, we can only assume it's the other person. Why are they sharing it? And why are they sharing it to the people they're sharing it with, i.e. the media, or potentially with Hype? We're going to be looking closely at some more of that kind of evidence in part 2 of this video, because I think this video is long enough, and you'll be able to find that video here. It should be out within the next 24 hours, so bear with me, I'm going to record it right after this one. And in the meantime, you can also check out my breakdown of Hani's visa issues, an overview of the whole Dabber Link debacle, and details on how Min Heejin has played a key part in the controversial covering up of VP Lee's sexual harassment case with employee B, or in my previous videos featured in the ADOR Gate playlist. This has been Han from the Haniverse. Thanks for stopping by.